everybody, welcome to the Oldish TV. My name is Karen Brown. I'm the publisher and editor of the Oldish, and it is always my pleasure to welcome you here with us today. Now today on the show we're going to talk about two subjects. We're going to talk about retirement savings. Now on a show a couple of weeks ago we talked about retirement and healthcare costs. And I did get some emails from people who were wondering how on earth they decide whether what they've got squirreled away was going to be enough to sustain them through their retirement. So, we published another article just the other day about this very topic, and there is a very useful tool contained within that article that I'm going to show you, and hopefully it will give you some peace of mind. The second thing we're going to talk about is empathy. Having empathy for seniors. Again, this bounces off an article that really resonated for me that we published recently, and I'm going to show you a New York Times article that really hits it home. So let's get going and dive right into the article that we published right here. So this one, seniors may outlive retirement savings. That is something that is probably relatively scary for a lot of people. Back in the day when we were in our 20s, 30s, and 40s and we were saving for our retirement and we were contributing to pension plans or investments, any kind of investment at all, we probably thought we were doing okay. Turns out now, based on a World Economic Forum report, that that's really not the case. We are living longer. And they feel that with greater life expectancy, seniors could outlive their savings by as much as 10 years, possibly more. That's a little frightening, isn't it? People are living well into their 80s and 90s. People are also working longer, not always because they want to, sometimes because they want to. I, for one, don't ever see a day when I retire. I suppose it will happen, but now, here's an important point for women. Women live longer than men and are at the greatest risk for financial insecurity in their old age. Japan has the highest life expectancy for women, 87.1 years, 81 for men. The Japanese are very conservative with their investments, but their investments, because they are so conservative, are yielding lower returns, and that's compounding the problem. Okay, so this retirement calculator I'm going to show you right here. That is the link that is included in this article. It's right here. You can click on that and it will take you to this page. Now, NerdWallet, I don't know very much about NerdWallet, so I'm not going to be recommending to you the entire site, but I will tell you that this little tool seems abundantly interesting. You fill in some blanks, and this is something you can do whether you are 35, 55, 70, it doesn't matter. Now, I want you to remember one thing when you're looking at filling in something like this. In the show that we did on retirement savings, the point was made that when you are living a life where you're working, you're probably living in the family home. You have a car, you are eating out, you may be still acquiring things. So your monthly expenditures may very well be considerably more than when you retire. When you retire, you may not eat out as much. And we're talking about older retirement. I know you Yahoo it up for the first 5 years after you retire, and you're going to need more money to do that. But as you get a little bit older and more settled into your retirement years, you don't need the clothes. You may not be driving anymore. And certainly you won't be commuting to work. So your car expenditures may be considerably less or eliminated altogether. Your clothing I mentioned, you may not be eating out, entertaining the same way. You may go to an adult child's house for all those major occasions instead of having someone into your house. In fact, you may sell your house. You may make the compromise that the family home no longer works for you. We've talked about that a lot. Instead of trying to adapt to what you've got, you move to a place that is more suited to the lifestyle that you now lead. So instead of the big, 3,000 square foot family home, you may move to an 800 square foot apartment or condo. You may rent rather than own. Um, there are so many changes that take place in your life when you retire, either because you feel you need to, because you have to, or because you've chosen to make compromises. So that's going to change these numbers somewhat. So you can fill this in to be whatever you want. So, a 35-year-old whose pre-tax income is 60 and currently has a savings of $30,000 has a long way to go. 51% to goal, but they're only 35 years old. For our purposes, let's say we are 60. Let's say we're 60 years old, and your pre-tax income, maybe you're up there a little bit more. Say it's 70,000. And every month, this is what you save. It may or may not be true. You may save on an annualized basis, divide that by 12 and pop that figure in here. So, you may save, let's say you save $450 a month. Let's just say. Now, what's important down here is this optional stuff. Your monthly retirement spending. This is where you get to take the difference between what you are spending now when you're working on everything. Your home, your utilities, your car, your travel, your clothes, the whole 9 yards. Try to do yourself a budget for when you retire. That's where the rubber meets the road. Try to do that. And if you figure that your monthly retirement spending is going to be less than what it is now, put it in here. Let's say your retirement, what is it up here? Every month you save my current pre-tax income. Okay, so let's say when you're 60, your savings are more. I'm going to say that you might have $200,000 in savings. And every month at the age of 60, you're managing to save $450. Your monthly retirement spending may be less. Let's say you're only going to spend $3,000 a month. Other expected income. So they've got this little question thing here. So your pension can go in here. Now, if you sell your home, what I discovered in using this calculator is that you can't put the sale value of your home in this expected income. They really mean this as a monthly expected income. So if you sell your home and let's say you get $250,000 for your home, add that to this. So now you've got $450,000. Okay? And your other expected income, let's say from your existing investments, you are going to receive $3,000. It could be less than that, it could be more than that. I don't know. This is your own thing. But from your pension, let's say you have an income of an additional $1,000. And you want to retire at 70. And you expect to live to be 95. And then you get to pop in also down here the rate of return. So look at that. This over here has been changing in real time as I've gone about adding and subtracting various numbers. It's telling me I'm rocking it. It's telling me I need 0.62 million and I will have 0.88 million. So that's pretty good. Now, this is something that is so individual. I'm just making stuff up. This is not my financial situation. It's just to show you what you can do and how it will impact these numbers. So I highly recommend you go to this article, Seniors May Outlive Retirement Savings. It is at our website at theoldish.com. It'll be there forever, so whether you're seeing this live or whether you're seeing this archived a month from now or 12 years from now, this article will still be at the Oldish. You can just Google this title, or retirement savings will also bring up this article as one of your choices. And you too can go through the motions of figuring out where you stand financially. I think it's a really interesting exercise to go through. It lets you either relax or it kicks your butt a bit and tells you you've got to do a little better. You can share this retirement calculator with anyone because, as you could see, it doesn't matter what the age is. But if the onus is on you to be putting money aside in investments, then you need to get a realistic grip on what this means. Doesn't matter what your age is. What matters is that you have a realistic understanding of your numbers. Not everybody has financial advisors and accountants to go to. This is something you can do relatively on your own, okay? So I will leave that with you, and I also want to take you to this article on empathy. It really touched a nerve with me. So this is the article, Finding Empathy for Elderly Adults. We published it on June 17th by our erstwhile writer, Heather Vincent Meir. She does a lot of our work, and she is fantastic. And it starts with this: until you've walked a day in an elderly adult's shoes, it can be difficult to understand what they're going through. Now, here's the thing that really hit home with me. Elderly adults are largely disinclined to share their struggles with family and friends because they're afraid that it will impact their independence. And as we know, independence is absolutely everything to all of us. We want to be as independent as possible for as long as possible. And we get afraid that if we start talking to people who are decision makers in our lives, and for a lot of us, that's our children, our adult children, if we start saying, life is kind of rough, they will start saying, Mom, it's time to move. It's time to have people do these things for you. Into the home. That's what we're afraid of. Somebody's going to point at us and say, into the home with you where things can all be taken care of and life will be easier and we don't have to worry about you anymore. That's a pretty tough conversation. It's a really tough conversation. So, as this article points out a little later on, having open and honest conversations about how to meet the care needs of our elders is a tricky conversation. But you need to have empathy. If you're the adult child and you're having this conversation with a parent who is older and maybe starting to slow down, or maybe you're having a little bit of concern about how they are going to manage in their life, you need to have empathy. This doesn't need to be, you need to have this, this, and this because it makes your life easier. This is about making the older adult's life a better place to be, not about making your life easier. There's a difference. There's a really big difference. So there is going to be a wave of these baby boomers that come along who have challenges that need to be met. Now, there is an article that I want to show you that really, really hit home for me, and it's this one. It's in the New York Times. I will put the link below this video for those of you who are interested in going to read it. For the New York Times, often you have to have a subscription to get access, but I think they allow you a certain number of articles a month. This article was written by an older adult child who fractured their ankle. And it wasn't until that ankle was fractured that this person saw firsthand how difficult life was for Dad. Just putting on socks became something that was a big trial. So there you go. This article starts out, this is by Kristen Palm. So this is a female. And she thought that her father was being obsessed about some things, thought that Dad was maybe being a little bit challenging in ways that maybe he shouldn't have been challenging. Her father, by the way, has passed, and you will read that at the end of the article. But it was very painful for her to watch her dad struggle. She is very honest about that and about her challenges with providing care for her father. She says here she moved across the country to care for him after her mother died. And that was very difficult for her. She saw how difficult his life was, how unwieldy it was for him to pick up the morning paper, to have a bath, to put on socks. And I think that she thought one way about all of this, but it wasn't until she herself broke her ankle. There you go. Wasn't until she broke her ankle that she saw how absolutely difficult his life could be for him. Because life became difficult for her. So, you know, when she broke her ankle, now here's a really good point that she makes in this article. She could not independently procure food or cook it or look after the dog that she had inherited from her father. And I guess the dog vomited on the stairs in the middle of the night, and she just wasn't sure how she was going to manage this. She had to start accepting rides and start accepting help. Her wardrobe is built around socks with treads and sweaters with patch pockets, much as my father's depended on pre-tied tennis shoes and cargo pants. So she got used to the way that it must have been for him. She tossed clothes in a knotted plastic bag down to the basement where the washing machine was because she couldn't carry a bag of laundry down the stairs. She boarded the dog so that she didn't have to bend over and pick his food bowl up off the floor. Imagine that. Imagine that. She had started to leave things like her computer strategically placed on the couch and set up a breakfast station in the kitchen. Isn't that interesting? So it wasn't until her life altered that she could see how her father's life altered, except that hers altered very quickly, in a heartbeat. His life altered more slowly over time. But guess what? It ended up being the same thing at the same place. So isn't that interesting? Now, this particular author lives in Detroit, so she lives in a major city where a lot of this stuff was available. A lot of the supports were available to her. She still found it very challenging. So I would urge all of you to, at least in your mind, walk a mile in their shoes before you start issuing edicts or making suggestions that you think are helpful that really aren't helpful. Think of it from the older adult's point of view. Independence is the name of the game. They want to be, all of us want to be, as independent as possible for as long as possible. And we need to find adaptations to make our lives a little easier, to help us be that independent person. Now, the onus is on the older adult, as we have discussed many times before, to make sure that we are doing our part. There are compromises that we have to make, and they're not always compromises that we love. They aren't. We don't want to sell the family home, but sometimes selling that family home and moving to a more adapted environment brings us that longer independence. If we can just give that hint to our older adult children that we don't want you to solve our problems, we want you to help us assess them and look at alternatives, see what the options are. Then perhaps we can figure out a way to move forward so that we have that independence that we crave for as long as possible. And you get to be our child, and you get to have your mom or your dad instead of a patient that needs care. Every child just wants their mom or their dad. But as soon as you have to start caring for them, providing that level of care, it doesn't get better. It doesn't get better as adults get older. It becomes more complicated, more complex, more involved when all you really want is your mom or your dad. So, we all have to work together. There needs to be empathy on both sides. We need, as older adults, to have empathy for the fact that our adult children are leading their lives. They're perhaps raising families, they are building careers, and they may not have the kind of time that we're going to require. So we need to solve our own problems and not just wait and see what happens. We need to have empathy for them. At the same time, they need to have empathy for us and understand that what we want is independence and to live our best lives for as long as we possibly can. There you go, people. That is our show for today. We have answered some questions, hopefully, from people who messaged us asking about how to assess their retirement situation from a financial perspective. And we've also looked at the empathy piece, which I think is very important for everybody to have. Thank you for being with us today on this show. Follow us wherever you like to follow people. We are everywhere. You're watching this show on Facebook, we're there. If you're watching this show on YouTube, we're there too. If you have a preference as to social platforms, we're there. Just go to it and type in the Oldish and you will find us, because we're there, we're everywhere. And we hope to meet you there. Until we meet again next week, please take care of one another and remember that it does take a village to age a senior.